Hi, folks. You might be aware that I've been traveling for the holidays. Unfortunately, I seem to have come down with something. I haven't been sick in a good long while, and even longer than that I've been sick like this. One of my family members has guardianship of a fragile special needs baby, and we can't have the baby getting sick with whatever it is that I've got. So I came home and will be spending a few days getting well. I do have a couple of words that you all have requested for word of the day, and we'll hang on to those until I can read them without falling into paroxysms of coughing. Until then, I'll find some episodes from previous years to run for you. I appreciate your thoughts and prayers as I get better. We'll talk soon.
Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for November 23rd. November 23rd is the 327th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 38 days remaining until the end of the year. And now we're going to go all the way back to the year 534 BC, when Thespis of Icaria became the first recorded actor to portray a character on stage. Thespis also invented theatrical touring. He would tour various cities while carrying his costumes, masks, and other props in a horse-drawn wagon. So this suggests that Thespis invented acting in the Western world, and that prior to his performances, no one had ever assumed the resemblance of another person for the purpose of storytelling. But actually, Thespis is the first known actor in written plays. Because of this, we think he may have had a substantial role in changing the way stories were told, thereby inventing theater as we know it today. I imagine it seems rather obvious, but this is where we get the word thespians. Actors in the English-speaking part of the world are referred to as thespians, which always reminds me of John Lovett's Compulsive Liar skits. I'm a thespian. 1499, Flemish impostor executed in London. Perkin Warbeck, who invaded England in 1497, claimed to be the lost son of King Edward IV, but he was hanged for allegedly trying to escape from the Tower of London. Believed to be a native of Tournai in Belgium, Warbeck went to Ireland in 1491 and claimed that he was Richard, Duke of York, second son of Edward IV. Richard and his elder brother were presumed murdered in the Tower of London by their uncle King Richard III in 1483. Warbeck found support from the enemies of King Henry VIII, the first Tudor king of England, and in 1497, with King Henry's larger army, he fled, but was captured and imprisoned. In November of 1499, he was executed. Now here's the thing. Since Warbeck's story was written by the Tudors, history's victors in this case, it might never be known whether he was actually Richard of York or just a Flemish impostor. A different sort of thespian, I guess. And here's an interesting entry. In 1644, John Milton published a pamphlet called Areopagitica. Areopagitica. This was a pamphlet decrying censorship. So this has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? In 1859, legendary outlaw Billy the Kid was born. The infamous Western outlaw known as Billy the Kid was born in a poor Irish neighborhood on New York City's East Side. Before he was shot dead at age 21, Billy reputedly killed at least 9 people in the American West. Billy the Kid called himself William H. Bonney, but his original name was more likely Henry McCarty. In 1876, corrupt Tammany Hall leader William Mager Tweed, better known as Boss Tweed, was delivered to authorities in New York City after being captured in Spain. In 1888, American comedian and musician Adolph Marx, better known as Harpo Marx, was born in Manhattan, New York on this day. He died in September of 1964 at the age of 75. 1889, the first jukebox went into operation at the Palais Royal Saloon in San Francisco. 1892, Russian-French illustrator and designer Erte was born on this day. Interesting work. He made sculptures and visual art and set and costume designs for the movie industry. He died in 1990 at the age of 97. 1924, Edwin Hubble's discovery that the Andromeda Nebula was actually another island galaxy far outside our own Milky Way was first published in the New York Times. 1936, Life magazine is reborn as a photo magazine. It enjoyed immediate success. Almost overnight, it changed the way people looked at the world by changing the way people could look at the world. I guess you could say the internet has done a similar thing now. At its peak, Life magazine had a circulation of over 8 million, proving a significant influence on American life in the beginning and middle of the 20th century. Life ceased running as a weekly publication in 1972 when it began losing audience and advertising dollars to television. There's always some new kid comes around, steals all the attention. In 1940, World War II news, Romania became a signatory of the Tripartite Pact, officially joining Axis powers. In 1959, the Birdman of Alcatraz was allowed a small taste of freedom. Robert Stroud, the famous Birdman of Alcatraz, was released from solitary confinement for the first time since 1916. And you may wonder, why was he in prison forever and in solitary confinement for most of it? Well, that all started when he killed a bartender in a brawl. I'm going to guess alcohol was involved. Shortly before he was to be released in prison for that, he killed a guard. He insisted this was in self-defense, but he was convicted for that too. He got the death penalty that time, but his mom wrote a letter to President Woodrow Wilson, and President Wilson commuted his death sentence. Instead, he was to spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement, which is worse than death for some people. Anyway, somehow, for some reason, I don't know why, people started bringing him canaries. And he became an expert in ornithology, or the study of birds. He even wrote a book about it. But the publisher decided not to pay him. And since he was in prison, he couldn't sue the publisher for non-payment, so he took out advertisements to complain about the situation instead. Prison officials handled that by sending him to Alcatraz. His book, by the way, if you're interested, is The Digest of Diseases of Birds by Robert Stroud. I'll see if I can find a link to it and put that in the show notes. It's a 500-page text that included his own illustrations. He really hated being in solitary and tried to commit suicide several times. Eventually, they moved him off Alcatraz, and the legendary Birdman of Alcatraz died in a Missouri prison in 1963 at the age of 73. Speaking of 1963, on November 23, 1963, the BBC broadcast the first episode of a show called An Unearthly Child, which was the first story from the first series of Doctor Who, which is now the world's longest-running science fiction drama. In 1979, an IRA member was sentenced for Mountbatten's assassination. Thomas McMahon, a member of the Irish Republican Army, IRA, was sentenced to life imprisonment for the preparing and planting of the bomb that killed Lord Louis Mountbatten and 3 others 3 months previously. You might remember when we spoke of the marriage of Princess Elizabeth to Philip Mountbatten. So yes, it's those Mountbattens. I mean, it's an unusual name. There's not that many of them around, and they're all related. In 1981, the Iran-Contra affair. Ronald Reagan signed the Top-Secret National Security Decision Directive 17, NSDD-17, giving the Central Intelligence Agency the authority to recruit and support Contra rebels in Nicaragua. A budget of $19 million was established for that purpose. In 1992, the first smartphone, the IBM Simon, was introduced at Comdex in Las Vegas, Nevada. 2012, American actor, director, and producer Larry Hagman died on this date in 2012. And golly, wasn't it just the other day we were talking about how everybody tuned in to watch the TV show Dallas and see who shot JR? Well, it was Larry Hagman who played JR. I didn't know until I did today's research that he was born right here in Fort Worth. He was 81 when he passed. In 2016, American baseball player Ralph Brackett died on this date at the age of 90. And I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share this video. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. one more time. Annie hears me talking. She's got to come see what's going on. Okay, lay down. That's a good girl. Good girl. Let's do that one again. Blah, 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 coffee mug. It's late enough in the day that we're off coffee and on fizzy water. Just read the words. Just read the words. That's a lot of words. Hope I pronounced that right. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? She's not a man. Sure would be nice if I could ever read one of these in its entirety without having to start anything over. That would be awesome. I might have to take another look at that. I'm going to have to look at that. This is why I don't do live shows.